Hello and welcome. It is Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, and this is Truly News. I am your host, Jason Van Sickle. It is a new day, which always brings a fresh start and a world full of opportunities. So, believe in yourself, remain optimistic, and focus on the positive. As you start this new day, let's begin by increasing your knowledge and expanding your insights with a review of the many fascinating things that are happening in the world as we take a look at today's news. As always, we start with a look at the top news from across the country, and here are the issues that are leading today's news. Trump keeps losing, Biden calls for cooperation, and SpaceX delivers astronauts. Trump's lawsuits in several states continue to be thrown out or withdrawn as the president proves that he has no case in his fight to attempt to overturn the election results. In the meantime, Biden is calling on the White House to recognize the results of the election and begin working on a transition. Biden is warning of unnecessary deaths if Trump continues to refuse to work with the new administration on a plan to address COVID. Biden is calling on cooperation with the White House in a transition that is prepared to fight COVID and implement a plan to distribute a vaccine. As new cases hit record levels in a number of states, the Trump administration seems to have abandoned their COVID efforts and placed all of their attention on trying to convince the public and the courts not to accept the election results. As Trump continued his complaints, California, the largest state in the country, had its worst day ever in terms of new COVID cases. Like many states, it now faces the reality of implementing strict measures and rolling back reopenings. In other news, the SpaceX capsule carrying 4 astronauts docked with the International Space Station, which is seen as the dawn of a new private space flight industry. SpaceX is one of a number of private companies that are now taking people and equipment to space under a program started by NASA. Over the next few years, plans are in place to take citizens to space and begin work on a new moon-based space station. And that is your top news for today. Now, in our look beyond the major headlines, let's start with the latest developments in science, technology, and space exploration. In science news, researchers show how amino acids were catalysts for life on Earth. New research published in the journal Science by scientists from University College London shows that an amino acid called cysteine was key to the origination of life on Earth. Proteins are built out of amino acids, and proteins are the building blocks of biology. Researchers were able to show how cysteine was initially created in water, which then acted as a catalyst for the creation of other proteins. In technology news, experts say that 2020 was the most secure election in U.S. history. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and other security experts countered claims that hacking or interference may have influenced the election. In a recently released statement, the National Association of Secretaries of States and the National Association of State Election Directorship joined top security experts in stating that the 2020 election was, quote, the most secure in American history, unquote. In space news, Russian cosmonauts prepare for spacewalk and a new research module. At the International Space Station, Russian cosmonauts get ready for a spacewalk on Wednesday, which will be part of their preparations for the delivery of a new Russian research module. The new module will be launched in April, and it will expand the space station's capacity. In addition to new research stations, the module will also expand the station's capacity to generate oxygen and water. And that is your science, technology, and space news for today. Now we look at the latest in health, social, and environmental news. In health news, researchers recommend that you go over easy on your eggs. New research conducted by the University of South Australia and the China Medical University found that people who eat one or more eggs per day have a 60% higher risk of diabetes. The effect of eggs on the development of diabetes seems to be greater in women than men. Americans consume an average of almost 29 grams of eggs per day, which is equivalent to approximately a half serving of eggs. In social news, support for stricter gun laws fell during the Trump administration. According to research released by the Gallup polling agency, support among Americans for stricter gun laws fell after Trump took office. During the Obama administration, support for stricter gun laws rose from a low of 44%. Support peaked at 67% after Trump took office, before falling to a recent level of 57%. That decline represents a return to some of the lowest levels seen in over 30 years. In environmental news, the United Kingdom will soon announce a green revolution. The United Kingdom is pushing forward plans to support green initiatives. The country's finance minister announced that Prime Minister Boris Johnson will release a plan for a, quote, green revolution, unquote, later this week. The UK move highlights increased efforts being made by industrialized nations to combat climate change, as the U.S. has increasingly pulled out of those efforts under Trump. And that is your health, social, and environmental news for today. Now it is time for a look at our economic and world news. In economic news, demand from China props up the price of U.S. crops. The price of crops is rising in the United States, but the increase is not the result of domestic demand. As COVID cast doubts on all aspects of the economy, crop prices showed the same uncertainty as other commodities. However, recent data showing high demand from China has now led to a more bullish sentiment in the futures market as the price of things like soybeans and winter wheat begin to rally. In world news, China signs massive new trade deal with a third of the world. China has signed one of the world's largest trade deals with 14 other countries. The deal includes a third of the world's population, which includes such countries as Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, New Zealand, and Australia. It comes at a time when China is expanding its partnerships and influence, while the Trump-led U.S. has been fighting trade wars and turning increasingly isolationist. And that is your economic and world news for today. To wrap things up, we take a look at your entertainment options with newly released movies, shows, and books. In newly released movies, today's movie is Mortal. A psychologist tries to help a mysterious man who has the power to make people and objects burn by touching them. Mortal is now available for rent on various services. In newly released shows, today's show is 2 Weeks to Live. A young misfit raised in isolation by her mother goes on a mission to honor her father's memory. Kim's father died when she was a young girl. Now, aged 21, she is determined to get revenge. 2 Weeks to Live is now showing on HBO Max. Finally, in entertainment news, our newly published book is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. This is a new book offering inspiration and hope in uncertain times with great stories and beautiful illustrations. The book is presently number 2 on the New York Times Advice and How-To bestseller list. And that is your entertainment news for today. As always, we end our podcast with Hope for Humanity, stories about the goodness and kindness that people show each other every day. And here is today's story. From Roanoke, Virginia, a woman gives gifts of kindness for her birthday. We have all had different ways of celebrating our birthdays, but in Virginia, a woman decided to celebrate her 53rd birthday by doing 53 acts of kindness for others. Deborah Farrell decided that she would put her time and effort into doing things that helped other people in need. So she posted a request on Facebook for recommendations and received many great ideas. Now she is setting out on her journey to give gifts of kindness to others as her own birthday gifts. And that is your news for November 17th, 2020. Have a wonderful day.